Looking for a place to speak your truth? This podcast is on an endless pursuit to build through entrepreneurship, empowerment, and creativity. Through thought-provoking content and a fearlessness to dive into untouched topics with an undeniable dedication to highlighting others who are often overlooked. This is Deep Conversations.
Stay tuned for Deep Conversation Podcast.
Welcome to Deep Conversations Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, and today I'm joined here with Monique Cabrera, a self-love enthusiast, transformation coach, and a founder of House of Self, where she helps women heal, rewrite their stories, and step into their power. You've created a space for women to embrace self-love, build confidence, and transform their lives. So I want to start and just ask you, can you take us back to a defining moment in your personal healing journey that led you to create House of Self?
You coming in hot.
I told you this one gonna be good.
Coming in hot. A defining moment. So it was kind of crazy the way the house came. Like, it's kind of been a buildup over years, but I didn't realize it until 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when God literally told me, here's the House of Self, and I want your life to be, your testimony to be the business. And I was like, nope, I didn't want any parts of coaching. I did not want to, because I felt like my life, who am I to coach when I come from such a tainted history? So I didn't feel like I was qualified. However, with me fighting back and forth with him, he kind of showed me all the moments in my life that built up to the House of Self. And I think one of the defining moments was December of 2019. I don't know. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I know I was down bad. And on paper, my life looked good. I have a 6-figure paying job. I'm single, no kids, living the life. I'm traveling. Everything is great. And I was having a great time doing it. But when I was back home and it was just me, myself, and I, it was dark and I was down and out. So I decided maybe 3 days before New Year's that I was going to Sedona on a solo trip to some soul retreat. A friend had told me about it months ago. I was hesitant because it sounded crazy as hell, but I was also desperate at this point. I tried everything else, so let's go. Literally, I'm on the plane and I'm like, all right, girl, you're crazy. You don't know who these people are. You're going to Sedona. You're by yourself. It's New Year's Day. It was a wild time, but when I tell you that was a pivotal moment in my healing journey. That's what kind of set the whole thing off. So I went for this 3-day retreat. It was focused, like you talk to these counselors and they kind of build a course for you based on what you want to heal in particular. And at that time, I was working on my child mother wound. Me and my mother had a toxic relationship. She passed away in 2013, but I grieved her later in life. So and I think I grieved her more so later in life because I started connecting why I was the way I was, and it all went back to my childhood with my mother. Here we go with it comes back no matter how long it takes to come back. So I went on this retreat and I left there, like I felt the moment that I was able to say I was healed from my mother wound, which was so crazy to me because I've been working on it for years, so I thought. And then in these sessions with these coaches, they just knew what to do to get me to where I needed to be. So after that, I was kind of like, okay, like a veil was almost lifted where I was able to see these are the things that have been keeping me back. Now, how do we work forward to overcome them and heal from them? Because to be honest, 90% of it was childhood trauma that was holding me back in my adult years. So I came back and I was still in a space of like, okay, I know what I need to do, but now how do we get that started? And then COVID happened. So at that point, there was no going out. I was literally in the house every single day. And then my life kind of slowed down. And then I was forced to sit with myself and really look at myself and deal with my issues that I've been running from. And that's when I realized the party and the drinking, all the things were masked so I don't have to deal with my own BS. So when COVID happened and I had no choice, it was a lot. It got ugly. It got really ugly because now it's just me and myself
Yep.
literally looking in the mirror. Because I also noticed that for years I would walk past the mirror. My hair is in check, my makeup is good, but I wasn't really looking in the mirror at the person that was staring back at me. And
Mm.
when I did that, it's like the floodgates open. And I had to be real and honest with myself and look at my flaws and look at where I'm going and get real on where I wanted to be. And I never took the time to really do that. It was always hustle, bustle, go, go, go. And I kept myself so consumed with people's problems and work and everything else that I didn't have time for myself. I didn't make time for myself. Because and at that time I didn't even know that sitting down with myself was going to be ugly because who
I know.
but that shit was oh sorry, that was ugly. It was
I
ugly.
know.
It was ugly. And I did that for so let's say from Jan till about August, I was like in the trenches just trying to figure out things. And one day God said, "You are moving to Charlotte." And I remember I was on my knees in my kitchen crying. No, my whole life is here. Like, why? And I'm fighting him, fighting him. That's when I learned to stop fighting because you're never gonna win that battle.
Yeah.
But I'm questioning him, I'm fighting. Um, and it was a pivotal point in my life as well because a lot was going on around me. COVID hit in a major way. My best friend was getting married and having a baby. And I'm like, you're telling me now that I have to drop all of this, pack my stuff and move. And I did that. I packed my stuff. And in October of 2020, I moved to Charlotte. So I say all that to say he's been putting these stepping stones in place.
Mm.
So I was in Charlotte for 4 years before he called me to coach. But those 4 years was isolated. I wasn't going out. I have friends that lived nearby, but I wasn't in the streets. I wasn't dating. I was doing nothing. It was me and my balcony and my journal every
Yeah.
single day. Um, and I feel like that time was an isolation season for me to really focus on myself, but to also strengthen my relationship with him because I couldn't get through the healing without God. Like people always ask, and I'm always like, I don't know, it's God. Because literally, when I tell you, I don't have an answer other than He was talking to me one on one, um, telling me and showing me the things that I needed to work on. So 2024, maybe 2023, he gave me the name the House of Self and what he wanted it to be. Um, and I kind of took it after I fought him on it. I kind of took it and ran with it, right? And then I was hitting the floor, got to make it a business, LLC, all these things. And then he had to stop me again. And he was like, I did not tell you to make it a business. I told you to share your story.
Yeah. Yeah.
You chose to take it and make it a business before I even called you to do that. So I had to take it back. And I just kept hearing, take it back to the basics, back to the basics. And back to the basics led me to the foundation of what love was,
Mm.
which was dark for me because you think foundation of love, you're born into a family of love, your parents love you, they adore you. That wasn't my truth. Um, I was born into my mother was in the streets. It was in the 80s. So, what was going on in the 80s. They were wild. My mother was in the streets. So she was absent for most of my life. And she ended up leaving me with my dad, who wasn't my birth father. It was my brother's birth father, but they met when she was pregnant, so he was always there. So to me, that's my father. But being born into neither parent was really there. So my relationship with love was always tainted because I grew up as the girl who didn't have her mom. This is not my real dad. Neither one of my parents loved me. My grandmother died at 9. This love thing was not looking too good
Mm.
for me. So, and that went with me honestly, up until the last 5 years, until I started the House of Self, to be real. That kind of followed me. And then I had to kind of sit one day and I went to the Bible. I was like, what is love at its true core meaning? And I didn't like Google's answer.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what, the Bible. And when it broke down what love meant, I was like, this is something that we're not taught to give ourselves. Because we're always taught to learn love externally. Love your mother, your father, your siblings, this and that. No one ever said you got to first love yourself.
Yep.
Um, and when I realized that I was on E because I was loving everybody else, I was like, something's not right here. So then I had to go reverse and literally start with myself and figure out. It was a simple question of what do I need in this moment? And when I answered that for myself, it like blew my mind. And it was that I needed love.
I think that's big too because a lot of people don't know what they need.
They don't know what they need.
You know what I mean? It's most go by what they hear or what they just perceive what would be nice.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And then you may get into a relationship and it's like you don't have or you're unfulfilled because you don't know what you need.
Yeah.
It's just I don't want to be alone, so I'm gonna just stick this out. And that is, man, that's a lot of and a lot of
Very
that
big.
too, a lot of that too is those generational curses that our family didn't know how to deal with
Yep.
either. And it's just passed down and a lot of times, unfortunately, we grow up into just having a burden on us that we don't know what it is. And it's just we think that's what it is.
Yeah. Passed down.
Until you get older and you start to look around and it's like my family kind of
You
my
get a little
family kind of
twisted.
yeah, because it's when you're young, it's like you just think this is what it is. It's like it's that's the normalcy of stuff. But
Mhm.
when you get older and you start to learn who you are and you start to look around at everything else, it's like, man, I really came out of all that.
And
That
I think about that at least once a week.
hmm
Like even now I'm back in New York and just in my old stomping grounds and in my old and I'm like, wow, I'm a product of this exact thing and I made it out of this because I did the work and broke the generational curses. And a lot of adulting, a lot of healing is unlearning what we were taught and replace. I always call it the toolbox. Like you got to go back to your toolbox and figure out what is it from my upbringing that I still can need and value, and what are some of the tools that we need to get rid of and put new tools in the box. Because even the way I deal with anger now, when I think back to the tools that I was shown as a child and how to deal with it, and I'm like, well, that was a little that was a little toxic. We gonna have to get rid of that and
Hey,
let's communicate. My new tool is communication because there was no communication back in the day. You feel how
yeah,
you feel, you put that in and you outlash and no one's even questioning the outlash.
yeah,
Um, and as you get older, you realize, okay, that was maybe that's not, maybe I don't need to yell to communicate. Maybe we just need to let me feel it, let me process it, let's talk about it. And that's a major one. Most adults to this day don't know how to communicate.
no. And you look at TV shows. Let's just use the what's it, hip hop wives or basketball wives and all that. All they do is show you the yelling and the
Flipping tables, they
yeah, and it's like
yelling.
and it's for one, it's a betrayal of people who you that's what you think that's what it is.
Yeah.
And it's that's not true. It's just that goes to show how much trauma people got going on. You know what I mean? It's just and it's that yelling and when you get older, that get tiring too.
It's exhausting.
Yeah,
It's
it's not something
exhausting.
it ain't something you have time to deal with anymore. You know
Right,
what I mean? It's like
right.
I ain't got time to be
I'm not
hollering
doing it.
and
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's a lot. So let me ask you, what was the biggest mindset shift since we talking about it that you had to make in your own life to become the woman you are today?
Um, my childhood doesn't determine where I go.
Hmm.
And this is also as I transitioned out of the mindset, I didn't realize how many people are held back by their past without even realizing that we're living as if we were still in the past. Like I was in survival mode longer than I needed to be. So when I told myself, oh, you're safe, you no longer have to be afraid or look over your shoulder or live in scarcity. You can live in abundance. You can have the life you want. You can. And when I started, actually, to be honest, a friend said to me, have you noticed that everything you say you're going to do and put your mind to, you do? And I didn't. Because all I was focused on were the things that I thought I was going to do that I didn't do. I didn't pay attention to what I actually did do.
Yeah.
And when she said it and I thought back, I was just, and I remember being a little girl, I mean, a little girl. And I used to think, I never want to be like my mother. I never want to live like my father. And I surpassed that a long time ago. I didn't notice it until maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Hmm.
And that's when I was like, we made it out. I could breathe now. And I keep that mindset. Like when people are down and out, no matter how down it is, we are still in control to an extent of what that story is. And I just want not even just women. I mean, I focus on women, but men too. Like we can rewrite our story at any time. It doesn't have to be what they said it's gonna look like, or it doesn't have to stay the way it was going. Like you have options, you have decisions. And I feel like so many people get complacent with what life has dealt them that they lose control and lose their power and don't realize that you just got to reclaim your power so you can get back on track so you can go after the life you want. A lot of us live in this limited box, and I hate that for us. Especially now as things are happening, I'm always thinking, damn, we worked so hard to get to where we are.
Yep.
And things like the current state of the world can't stop us from keeping, because it's easy to say now, well, I'm scared because I'm a person of color. I don't want to show, like, I feel like that's the goal actually, to keep us afraid to use our voice. And your voice is your story. You are like, we have to be able to stand in that confidently. And I want us to know that we are the narrators of our story.
Yeah.
That pen is in our hand. That pen is not in anybody else's hand.
Yep.
And when I took that approach with my life is when I started seeing things change. And of course, talking to God first, because I'm at a point where I don't move if he don't say
Yeah.
that's the right move.
And it's I was getting ready to say too, I'm like, God has already created a life for us. When we get here, it's so destructive that you
Yeah,
kind of just you fall into it.
yeah.
But like you said, you have to listen to that. But a lot of people don't know
Mm-hmm.
what that voice sounds like. They say, "How do you know that God is talking to you?" And I always tell them, I said, it's a different kind of peace you get when
Absolutely.
he because a lot of times we get confused of God's voice with our voice.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because we're so used to talking to ourselves and giving ourselves the choices to make and decisions to make. But when you look at it, I'm like, every time I decided to make a decision, I messed it up. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I ended up 5, 10 steps backwards than where I was supposed to be. And it's like you said, I can't even move now unless he says something. And however long that takes,
However long that takes.
I got to be cool with it because
Absolutely.
if I do it, it's gonna
We
take.
already know what's gonna happen when we take
Yeah,
it.
it's and
So
then you're gonna be mad. You're gonna be mad longer. It's like just I ain't got time for that.
absolutely. Like even for so my decision up to the House of Self cost me a lot of things, right? It cost me a
Hmm.
lot. I already had 2 businesses going that God was like, no, this is what I need your focus to be on. So this challenged me and I prayed on it and prayed on it. And everyone used to ask, how do you know? And I'm like, it's the peace that comes with the decision. There's no second guessing. And then he gives you the blueprint. He don't give you the whole thing. In fact, he don't even give it to you in order. Because he was showing me the end before he even showed me.
No, yeah,
I'm like, God, what in the world?
yep,
And that was it. Like when I said I rushed to make it a business, he showed me that it was going to be a business. He showed me that I was going to be on platforms. He showed me all of that. But that wasn't the starting point. He was basically what he said was, here's where I'll take you if you're obedient and if you follow what I called you to do. Here I go, being Russian and being
yep,
fast, but I went to that and he had to slow me back down. Like, no, that's not what it was. So now if it don't bring me, and that's how I know the voice, it's such a sense of peace. If I'm still questioning the decision after I make it, then that means God ain't confirming it.
yep,
Because when it comes with peace, I don't gotta ask no more questions. My next thing is,
no,
okay, so what you want me to do? Um, and that's how I knew the House of Self was meant to be something. And then when he said it's basically built on like it's literally my story that the business is built around. I don't even like to call it a business, to be honest. I don't
yeah,
like to call it
yep,
that because I feel like it's such a Like it's literally the safe place that I needed that I know so many other women needed. And I even created safe spaces before I knew I created safe spaces. Like people at work joke that I'm the therapist of the office. That's not even my job title. That's not even what I do.
Yeah, yeah. It's
But I just bring that space together.
yeah, and it's when you were talking about um how God sometimes shows you the end first. I was it's funny you said it. I got kind of real quiet to myself when you said it because in the Bible it talk about that everything he does, he shows you the end first because it's already done.
Already
So
done.
he's just showing you what it could be, but everything you gotta almost like a puzzle. You kind
Yeah,
of gotta work your way through. Once he
absolutely.
shows you that, you already know it's done, but you just got to do the work to get to that point. And this,
Yep.
man, that's
And trust the process.
yeah,
That's the hardest part is trusting the process.
because all of the trauma that we have, we don't have no trust.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Absolutely. And even that you say that full circle, because then it forces you to heal
Mm.
in order to build that trust.
Yep.
And that's the first person, when I started doing it, the first person I had to work on forgiving and trusting was myself.
Mm.
I would second guess like, girl, last time you dated, we ended up with this crazy person. Are you sure we could like it was a lot of that. Last business you
Yeah.
started, but you ain't finished. And it was like it's basically self-sabotage that started to
Mm.
come in. And I was sitting there like, well, that's true. I did start 4 different businesses. That's true. I've been dating for the last. And it was like, girl, you don't. And that's where the confidence building came in for me. Like people think I have people tell me all the time, I know I'm pretty. I don't need confidence. And I'm like, that don't got no confidence don't have anything to
No,
do with the way you look.
no.
And as we started talking and I broke down, we started because it's funny that your podcast is named Deep Conversations because I always end up in these casual conversations that get real deep as we're
Yeah.
talking. And
Yeah.
I'm talking to the girl, and we breaking it down, and I'm like, she's walking away like I didn't even know I had these insecurities. Yeah, because you look in them, it's so surface level for you. You look in the mirror, you look good, but when it comes down to what's up here or what's in here, it's very insecure. And that's when I had to build my confidence was in myself again because I wasn't confident. In fact, I didn't trust myself to make a decision of what I'm gonna eat today.
Yep.
And that's when I was like, okay, it don't matter what's on the outside. It,
Oh,
it's not the main thing to me at all. At
yeah.
all.
It's because we always say, or I always say, you could you could find somebody. I mean, if their insides, if that
Right.
spirit and stuff ain't right, it's looks don't matter because you could be pretty once you open your mouth. Lord have mercy. That
Absolutely.
now it's
Absolutely.
now
I,
you spell house differently.
I did.
It's Haus. What does that mean to you?
So this was God. This was
Yeah.
God there too.
Yep.
Because I wanted the House of Self to really represent all parts of me, right? Which is, I don't know if you can see you probably can't see my shirt, but I have the logo on. So it's three faces
Mm.
um, to represent all parts of self. Because I feel like we show up in different areas of life with the mask on, right? Work mask, friend mask, all types of masks. Um, and then the bougie part of me didn't want to spell house the same way everybody else did. But I wanted it to be like where safe space where it felt like a house. And I always envision it as this real tranquil luxury style home or house or space that you come in and you can just sit down and like take order mask off and
Yeah.
just um and I've been it's funny because when I started healing, my main focus was to be able to live my truth. Because I felt like I hid behind the mask a lot.
Yep.
And the way God delivered. Because now, and I always, before, normally I start off by saying, let me say sorry now because I'm real authentic. So it's just going to come out the way it comes out and there's no
See, but
filter.
that's how it's
Um,
supposed to be. Yep.
and that's how I feel like that's how we should be able to show up and all. And that's what I want for the house of stuff. I want you to show up with no filter, say what you want. Don't
Mhm.
feel. no type of way. So it's funny because I'm describing it, it just feels like a safe space. And that's what it means to me. It's definitely a safe space.
Yeah, it's a how would you say the people that you've come in contact with and their stories, how would you say that changed you?
Hmm, that's a good one. Um, so I'm an empath, but it's just who I am and always who
Yeah,
I have been. So I always, even before I start coaching somebody, I always put myself in their shoes and I can always see um both sides or three sides to the
yeah.
story, their side and the truth.
That's heavy too,
And
though.
huh?
That's heavy too, though, to do that.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, okay,
yeah.
yes. And sometimes I'll be like,
I know.
it feels heavy on my like as I'm in it, I feel heavy.
Mhm.
Lord.
Yeah,
I have to do work after because it's like sometimes I walk with it
yeah,
because I can, and most times I can see why somebody did something, even when it's like, but you know that was stupid as hell.
yeah.
But I can understand where they came from because I talked to them enough to know where it came from.
Yep.
Right? Like if I can connect, oh, well, she has this trauma and that's why she's acting out that way. So I'm very empathetic to that. And when I speak to people from that place, they're always in shock because they're always
Yeah,
like, there's no judgment. And I'm like, no, because you did X because of this. And when I say that, they're always like, I never connected it. And they will tell you, I always tell my story and I'm like, I don't know what, I have an ear for these things
yep.
where I'm like, that's why you do that. And they're like, oh, I never thought about that. So I do take on a lot of it and it's very heavy. So after even if it's a casual conversation like this, I kind of gotta sit and process it and also remind myself that it's not mine to always carry. That was God's
Yeah.
lesson to me last year was like, because I expose you to it to help the person does not mean you have to carry it
No, that's
or
hard
fix
though.
it.
But that's hard to do
Absolutely.
when you got compassion for people. It's a
Absolutely.
because listening to you, I do the same thing. Like, and I feel like sometimes that makes that makes people it makes them a lot easier for them to communicate and just lay stuff on me. And
Yeah.
I listen. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes I don't know why I do, but I'm like I listen because I want to hear literally what you have to say. And sometimes it's like if this is heavy on me, I know I'm like you just telling me this, and if it's
You're living it.
yeah, I'm like that's you need to get
Yeah.
up out of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And it's funny because God in the last year, because I was always the fix it since I was young. Abandonment issues, all the things. It made me the people pleasing. I can save you. Here I am. Bring it to me person. And in the last 2 years, 2 to 3, most of two, God used the closest relationships to me. All of them, not even just, he started with one and then used all of them to test me to see how far they could take me. I mean, my father, my best friend. I mean, he used people that he knew that I would lay backwards down for. And he made me draw lines and set boundaries and pick me over their needs. And I remember when it first happened, it was with my dad. And I never like, and I feel because I feel like I owe my father my life because he took me when I was, he didn't have to take me. I always feel like I owe him my life. So it don't matter what you asking for, I got it.
Yeah.
Whether I have it or not, I got it.
Uh,
And for this one particular situation, my initial reaction was, I got it. And then I had to sit and I was like, it was the old me versus the new me, literally sitting on the edge of my bed, like, girl, we worked too hard to get here. You're going to backslide in. And I'm having this conversation with myself. And the new version of me won, and I was, thank God. But it was scary, honestly, to even know that the previous version of me was so close to me still that I was like, man, that could have been a backslide. But to also accept and know that this was God's test to see, let me see the work you put in. Let me see how you show up. And after I had to be like, God, you play too much. Because why you had to go so close?
and it's so easy to go back though, because
So easy.
that's the safest place that you've been
Yeah.
your whole life is to go back to
Yep.
before. And the scariest part is the step step into that
Yeah.
next level. So for you to do that, that's like, especially like you said with your dad, that's like to set boundaries with that. Woo,
Yeah,
woo.
that's a hard one. Although I had to tell him off the other day so bad, I had to catch myself from saying, "Now go to your room," because it's that tough. It's that tough love that I had to show him. Um, but God no, and that's why I'm like, when I look back, I'm like, God knew exactly what He was doing. This is
Yep.
not coincidence. Everything is strategically because there's certain things that I had to heal from before I could even show up as this coach, and even that took me. It had to be the last 6 months I even started showing up as a coach because I was like, I don't know if I'm worthy still. And my therapist said to me before I even mentioned the House of Self, she was like, nobody wants a coach that went to school for 4 years and learned something in a book. They want somebody that experienced hard knock life, this like went through the struggle and made it out on the other side. And she would tell me that, and I'll be like, yeah, but, and then I sit back and I'm like, look at God. He already had this plan. I'm late. I'm late to the show. I'm late to the show. But I think that goes back to what we were saying about knowing and hear his voice. It's also making a space
Mm.
for his voice to come through because life is so loud that if you don't find that quiet corner in your life where you can just be you and him in silence, he gonna break through in different ways, and that's what I don't want. I don't like when God breaks through because then he come
Yeah.
with these traumatic
Yep.
experiences.
Because he gonna make you if he's talking to you and you're not listening, if you just allowing everything else to
Mhm.
just I remember one time, one incident where I was talking to him and I'm like, man, I've been talking to you and you ain't because sometimes I find myself talking to him like talking to
Oh, that's what I always thought for him.
yeah, and I'm like,
Always.
I'm talking to you and you ain't even listening, man. Like you ain't responding and he was
Mhm.
just like I remember him saying, well, you need to turn your volume down.
Mm.
And I was like, and that's what goes back to what I was saying. Sometimes we get confused with our
Yeah.
voice. And I was like, dang. Like it was
Mhm.
almost like I'm
Mhm.
like in my head, I'm like, dang, I just got pumped. You know, I'm like, he just pumped me because I only had nothing to say. And I'm like, dang. And it's like, turn your voice down so you can hear me because I'm not gonna raise my voice. That's just like
Yep.
that's how he's
Yep.
talking. He's like, I'm not gonna raise my voice. And anytime you feel like I got far away, I'm not the one that moved.
Oh.
Yeah, and I'm like like that's what I'm saying. That's how he be talking to me. And I'm like,
Yep.
now it's like I gotta learn. I like Ryan, watch what you say, man. Like you you
Oh,
got
because he gonna check you, and he gonna check
yeah,
you. He gonna check you good.
yep. And,
He
and
gonna.
I'm
It's funny
it's
you say
like
that. That was my lesson this morning. I was like, God, where are you? And he was like, I ain't walk away. You did.
yep,
Literally this morning. I was
yep.
like,
See, that's how I know. See, and this is why this is part of why I did this podcast because these conversations like this, you know what I mean? I'm throughout this whole conversation, you've been saying stuff and I've been thinking it. And I'm like, see, this is confirmation of stuff just now and just us going through stuff and you helping me, stuff you saying. And it's and I've been thinking since you've been talking, you was talking about self-love earlier.
mhm.
So what do you believe is the biggest misconception about self-love and how do you redefine it for the women you work with?
Ooh. So two things come to mind. The first one off the top is that self-love is selfish. And he took me through the ringer with that too.
Mm.
Because people will, when you start to heal and really work on yourself, and but in a genuine way where you're like loving yourself. Listen, and people always be like, self love is not spa, bubble baths. And it's not. It's not just spa and bubble baths, because that is a part of my self love. But it's really pouring into and going back to that question of what do I need today? What's gonna fill me up, what area, and coming at yourself with a place of acceptance and compassion, right? Because we're not gonna always like what comes up, but still being able to love yourself through those moments and not adding to the judgment or beating yourself up in that guilt, because guilt and judgment keep people, we are our own worst, we are the biggest and worst critics ever.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know how to take the approach of, yeah, I messed up here and it's okay. but we're gonna work through it, or we're gonna instead that's where we lose the trust in ourselves. So now it's like, all right, I messed up again, messed up again. So I don't keep a tally of my wrongdoings. Once I forgive myself, I forgive myself. And that takes practice, and it's hard. But I feel like when I started doing that and really pouring into what I need, regardless of what the people around me may need from me or think I need, um, that's when life really changed. And in that, a lot of people saw my moves as selfish. Like she's packing up, she's moving her stuff. She ain't talk. I didn't talk to nobody. I packed up and moved. There was no. But God called me to it. I don't got to check with nobody. God said this. This is what I'm doing.
No.
Sorry if you feel away, but this is what God called me to do.
Yeah.
But self-love became more about me and less about everybody else. What they needed from me, how they expected me to show up. And it was really more about, what do I need today? I need to read the Bible more. Okay, cool. I need a walk. Okay, cool. I need to sit and be on D&D because I love a D&D. Okay, cool. And not being worried about, were they going to say I didn't show up, or this one's expecting me to do this. And it was like, I had to cut all the noise out. And I think that's the biggest part. Like when I talk to people and ask them why they don't know how to self-love or what's their self-love, they don't know, because it's always, well, I'm a mom, I'm a dad, I'm a supervisor, I'm a this, I didn't ask you any of that. But that's what we lead with. And those are the things that consume our time, that accolades take up more than, I just need 5 minutes for myself.
That's the perfect word. That's accolades.
Just accolades. That's all
Yep.
it is. I'm like, you lead with all these titles, and then when you're stripped from them and it's just you don't know what you need. You don't know who you are. You don't know how to fill your own cup. And that to me is a sad thing, when you are so down and out that you don't know how to get yourself back up. Because then you stay in this space of depression, stagnant, stuck, and you don't even know what to do to get yourself out of it, without realizing that all you need is just a little more love from your, like, pour into yourself to give you what you need. That kind of bothers me. Every time I talk about it, it's like I hate that for us, because it's something so simple, but yet we make it like it requires no money, it requires nothing. It's just you sitting down and asking yourself, what do I need right now? How do I love myself through this? How do I celebrate myself? People don't even know how to celebrate themselves. Small wins, it's like we just check it off and keep going. And
That's
I
something we're
feel,
supposed to have too.
say it again.
That's something we're supposed to have. You know what I'm saying? Like, where did that go to where most of us don't
We
have
don't have it. We can do it for others.
it? Yeah.
But my question to that is, if you can do it for others, what about you?
Because
Like, if it's good
sometimes
enough for somebody else to have, why is it not good
yeah,
enough for me to have?
because sometimes we again, full circle, you was talking about not knowing how to communicate. People don't know how to communicate, so they try to help others to try to tell them or show them
Yep.
this is how I need it.
Yep.
I don't know how to, I don't know how to do it for myself, but this is how I need. And that's
Yep.
sometimes people ain't no mind reader. I remember my grandmother told me, God rest her soul. That's one of the, I didn't understand it when she said it, but as I got older, whoo, she said, you can't worry about changing nobody. She said, they're going to change you before you change them. And I had to like, at
Absolutely.
first I'm like,
Yeah.
what are you
Yeah.
talking about? But as I got older, I'm like, yeah, because I could sit up all day trying to put it in somebody's face. Look, this is how it's supposed to be. This is what I need. They don't care.
They don't care.
No, it ain't got nothing.
They don't
And you're
care.
gonna end up being stressed and frustrated and angry, and then you're gonna start having resentment toward people.
Yep.
Ain't nobody got time for none of that.
Yep. Yep. And it all goes back to not being able to know how to communicate.
Yep.
I had this, it's so crazy you say this. My brother, when my mother was absent in the streets. I
Mhm.
mean, she was in the streets heavy. Heavy. Prostitution, like the whole, like we witnessed these things.
Mhm.
So that's always been in my mind. So my brother, and then we go after what we know. So I
Yeah.
went after a man like my dad. My brother's went
Mhm.
after a woman like my mother.
Yep.
My brother had a baby with a young girl, just like my mother. So, and they had a little girl. So in my mind, the mother was absent too. I had to save this little girl because you can't grow up how I grew up. So I made it, I mean, it was my project to make sure she did not grow up how I grew up. Life took its course and she ended up back with the mom, and that's a whole mess. But there was a point, but my relationship and what I did took a toll on my relationship with my brother. And as we were having a conversation years later, and I was expressing to him, like I sacrificed my life for this little girl. I was like her mom. I did X, Y, Z, moon back. He was like, I appreciate it and I acknowledge it, but to be honest, I never asked you for it. And when he said it, I was kind of like, you got some nerve. But then I sat back and I was like,
Yeah.
he never asked me for it. He never asked me to jump in and take the place, so I can't be mad at him for not acknowledging and showing the way I wanted to, something that he never asked me for. And I realized that was my love language, or me trying to fill a void
Yep.
because I needed that love. It had nothing to do with my niece or my brother.
Yep.
And when I sat with that truth, I was like, again, I was like, God, you coming in.
Yeah.
That was a heavy one.
Yep.
And then it made me reevaluate every other relationship. Why did you stay in a toxic relationship for so long? Because I was trying to show him that I had the love that you needed. And it's like, he didn't ask you for that, girl. Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
overextended now. You have resentment because you feel like you sacrificed and overdid yourself for something that he wasn't asking you for, and showed that he wasn't even receptive to you giving,
Yeah. I
but you
always tell
kept
people,
giving.
and I feel like I want to have a conversation with um men and women, like a panel so we can kind of
Mm-hmm.
sit and talk about all this stuff. But I always say that too, in relationships, we always have a tendency to blame
Mm-hmm.
the other person, whether you cheated or not. If it didn't work out, there was blame to go around for both. And then you may, in your mind, think, well, I was this and I was doing this and I was it. Sometimes that ain't what people,
Right.
like you said, that's not what they needed. And you could push them away from doing stuff because, again, communication.
Mm-hmm.
I always
Mm-hmm.
tell people that's the number one thing in a relationship. I mean, that's the top of it's that trumps
That's
everything.
it. That's it. That's absolutely it. And I asked a few months ago, like, when did we stop communicating? But then it took me back to childhood. We stopped communicating when they told us stay out of grown folks' business. When they told us
Mm,
what happens in this house, stay in this house. When they never asked, like I always think my grandmother passed away and nobody sat me down to discuss what's gonna happen next in life. I became an adult at 9. Nobody sat me down to talk about this. So that's when I feel like we started losing our voice and knowing how to communicate. Because then it became, is it safe to talk? Can I not talk? What can I say?
mm.
Can I share this? Is it sharing too much? All these things went through my mind that I just shut down, and journaling started becoming the way I communicated. So now I couldn't, like my father used to get so mad at me. I used to write letters to him on how I felt. And he used to make me stand there and read them to him, and then would ask me, why couldn't you just tell me this? But I was too afraid to say because you took my voice when you told me I'm talking out of pocket or nobody asked you to share that. And to this day, I'm still a journaler. I always say journaling saved my life because what I wanted to get out and I couldn't verbally say is in those pages until my daddy found it and read it. And then I stopped journaling for a little bit because that was a whole nother thing. Um, but it's true. And it's like now we have to find that security in communicating again. Because it's always like, how is this person going to receive it? But that's not our job. Like I always say, it's not your job to, they're going to receive it however they're able to receive it. My job is to say what I got to say in a respectful way that gets my feelings across. But how you receive it is not really my business.
You might be the female me, because you just saying it, I say that all the time. And I'm like, I've learned that over the years. And I always say, people always say, you so honest sometimes that it's like sometimes people they can't take it. And I'm like, however they take that, that's on them.
Nothing to do with me.
That don't have nothing to do with me because if I don't say it and I don't get it out, I know me. I'm gonna be,
Yeah,
I'm gonna be a mess. So
absolutely.
I got to get it out, and however you take it is however you take it, and then we'll have to deal with it like that. But
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not like you said, I'm not gonna say it disrespectfully or anything like that, but I got to get it out because, ooh, Jesus.
Absolutely. And I think the important part of that is, and people can't deal with the truth.
Hmm.
And I often have to have the conversation of if you and I are friends or whatever the relationship is, you have to know me to know that what I'm saying to you isn't coming from a place of malice or disrespect.
Oh,
And if we can't have that open conversation for whatever reason, then that's a bigger problem.
yeah,
One, but I'm gonna need you to step back for a second and ask, what about what I said stung you the most? And is it a me problem or is it a you problem? Because 9 out of 10 is something that you're battling with that doesn't have nothing to do with what I said, but it
yep,
triggered something in you that you need to work on. So let's not point fingers. Let's sit back
yep.
and look in the mirror. But that's the hardest part. That's
Yep.
the hardest part for people is to sit back and look in the mirror.
That's how you said.
It is.
See, everything keep coming back. Like you said, for the longest time, you would walk past the mirror and you never actually looked at yourself. Yeah, that's
I
that's
never looked in that mirror.
that's crazy. I'm gonna ask you this. I got a
Mhm.
couple more questions. I can't tell you how
Okay.
much I appreciate this conversation
Of
too.
course.
But if you could give one piece of advice to a woman who feels stuck in their current reality, what would you tell
Um, that this is not a period in your story, it's a comma. You are the narrator. You are in control. And you can change whatever it is because you are worthy. And see, when I say that, it sounds so cliche, and people hear it as a cliche way, but it really is the truth. Like, the pen is in our hand. Change it. You don't like it? Let's change it. And it starts with you and what you want. So tap into what you want, figure out what that is, and then go after that. It really is that simple.
them? Yeah, it
I'm
is.
not saying the work is hard, but the reality of it is it really
Yeah.
is that simple.
Yep. But that's crazy. That's how God works. It's when you when you sit back and look at the things that He asked, it's simple. Those are simple things that He asked, but you have to go, you have to do the work to do it. But it's simple. Those are simple changes because He done already done most of the work. Like there's over 600 sins that He says that you shouldn't do, but He only asks you to handle 10.
Yep. Yep.
Don't kill nobody.
That's simple.
What that's like, what are we doing? Don't kill nobody, man. Like it's yeah, it's simple, but we don't like to we don't like to look at ourselves.
Mm-mm. It's easier for me to blame my mother. It's easier for me to blame that bad relationship.
Yep.
Like those things are easy because it doesn't put me in a place to own, to be accountable,
Mm.
and to find fault to fix. And people, it's funny because people always ask me, "How did you forgive your mother?" God. And I remember when I first decided I was going to church and walking with God, I literally was like, "All right, I could follow all these commandments, but honor thy mother. You know I don't like her. So God, we got a problem. Literally, that was my prayer to him.
Yep.
But see, don't play with God because what he did, the way he got me to humble myself was so traumatic. Me and my mother did not get along. We had a bad relationship. She got sick, had cancer. I was her oldest daughter. I was forced to take care of her. So now I got to deal with my mother dying and my emotions. I was like, God, really? To the point that at her funeral, I stood up and said, "It's crazy. I stand before you in honor of my mother." And as I said it out loud for the first time, I was like, I'm at her funeral saying this.
Yep.
Um, but God has a way, and I found out I had ADHD through praying. Like God answers, He shows up, and that's how people. So that's my other piece of advice is don't take it to your friends, don't take it to social media. Like just sit, you and God, and have these conversations, and He will tell you how to get out of whatever situation you're in.
Yep.
This man literally told me I had ADHD, and I was like, "You really play too much, but let me go get tested." And sure
Yeah.
enough,
Yep.
found out I did. Um, so that's my advice. It's like just don't stay stuck. See literally faith the size of a mustard seed. Let that be that little seed that don't lose faith because there is another side too, wherever you are.
Yeah. So what would you this one kind of deep.
Oh gosh.
No, I always I like asking this question. These last two questions I like asking because most people don't think about, you know what I mean? Um, you now,
Uh-huh.
who you are now, what would you say to the younger Monique? No, that was deep on it.
I've been I've been avoiding this question. It has been my journal topic for 3 weeks now.
Yeah.
Um, wow. I would tell her first that I love her for sure. Because um I would also tell her that she can do anything she put her mind to, because I never believed it. So I would definitely tell her that. Um, I'm finally gonna journal this tonight. Uh, I would definitely tell her she's worthy.
Mm.
I think that might even be the first thing that I tell her is that she's worthy. Because Lord, I did not think I was worthy. Um, and that your mistakes don't define who you are. The way you handle them define who you are.
I like that question because I come to find that when we always thought like when we were all younger, we all had those same feelings because we all everybody I ask responds the exact same, and that goes to show
Very.
me that we've all going back to communicate as younger. Our parents, they go through stuff. You know what I mean? All our parents and stuff, they go through things, but we never really realized as they're raising us, we're watching them grow up too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So those mistakes, some things that they might not have had the capacity to do for us. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So in our mental, we may have took it a certain way, but as we can look later on, it's like, dang, I
They
would tell
became
that.
just like us.
Yeah, yep,
They
yep.
had their own trauma.
That's what. Yeah, yep,
And that for me is what helped me forgive my mother and my father, to be honest, because I had to realize that they were operating in a space of trauma that we were lucky enough to, some of us were lucky enough to break. So we understand,
yep.
but they, my mother was a drug addict strung out. Like, and now I can say, thank God she did leave me with my father and didn't take
Yeah,
me down them same dark roads with her because she
yep.
could have.
And that gives you it's like that allows you to give them so much grace too,
So
and then
much grace.
it gives you more peace too because it's like all right, they like you said, she loved me enough to say
Yeah.
I can't put her through that. You know what I mean? It's
Yep. Yep.
this now last question. Before I ask you this question, for the people who are gonna be watching, can you give your social media so everybody can, know where you are and reach out to you?
Yes, of course. On Instagram, I'm at the House of Self, HAUS of Self, and then same on Facebook, same on TikTok. And then my personal, I like people to still see the personal sides of me. The
Yeah.
personal sides of me is Mo Lovin, MOELUVIN on Instagram and Facebook. And then of course the website, the House of Self. It's www.thehouseofself.com.
And I usually put a preview out. So
Okay.
I'm gonna tag you in all that stuff and all those. And when I put it on YouTube, I'm gonna put all that in the description.
Okay.
But
Okay.
last question. What what have you learned about yourself throughout your entire life, mentally and spiritually?
Ooh, wow.
That's gonna be something else you're gonna have to journal too.
Yes. What have I learned about myself mentally and uh
I can tell.
spirit?
Before
Yeah.
you answer, I
Uh,
can just from knowing you right now, I can tell you ain't no punk spiritually.
Oh, no, God got me.
That's what I'm saying.
God got me.
If when you do walk in the spirit, you can't be no punk because
Yeah, no.
it's too much stuff. So this is
Yeah. Yeah, that I always that's my reminder daily is that God don't play about me. He don't
yeah,
play with me or about me.
yeah,
And that you know what? That's what I learned. Because I always been spiritual. Not even thinking back, I always earned for that relationship with him. I wanted to be able to say, I feel the relationship. Now, oh, I feel the relationship. I know when he talks, I know when he tells me to move. I definitely. Um, and he always had me covered. So whenever I'm now in doubt, that's honestly what gets me out of anything is that I'm like, God got me.
yeah,
And I wish I realized that sooner in life, but it is what it is. Because I would have moved with more confidence. Because you definitely move with a different level of confidence when you know God got you.
yeah,
So that's what I learned about myself spiritually is that I want to say since birth, God has always had his hand on me and covered me. I just needed that confidence. And then what I learned about myself is that, man, this is a hard question. Um, huh, the first time I'm saying this out loud is that I was always rooted in love and I always moved in love. It just showed up differently based on where I was in that healing journey. Sometimes I showed up in the toxic love. I
yeah.
didn't realize it, like not realizing it,
No, yeah.
but I always moved in love. So
We
it's
can't,
crazy. Here we are, fast forward 40 years later, self-love is what I focus on, right?
and we can't, regardless of how angry or how, like you said, sometimes you may be toxic. That's who we are at the core is a loving being.
Mhm.
We can't
Mhm.
you can't even run from that. And most of the time when you see people who may be in relationships or maybe acting out by self and just looking for attention, it's that love that they're looking
For
for.
love.
That's
Yeah,
all it is. And
absolutely.
I'm like most people just need a hug or something just to somebody to talk to or communicate with because
Yeah,
they don't know how to communicate like we've been talking about. It's
yeah.
the only way they know how to do it is to act out. I've seen so many people. I interviewed a guy who's he's been in prison for 20 something years, and I was interviewing him, and I asked him. I said, what's one thing that you think um that you could have used growing up? Because he went to prison when he was 16, and he was like love. And when you just said that, I was thinking all that stuff started. I'm like, dang, that's all everybody ever need. That's why God said love conquers all.
Yep. Yeah, even when you think about when you argue with somebody, you're mad at somebody. Yeah, the situation itself may have made you mad, but it really stems down to, but I had a lot of love for this person,
Yep,
or I loved you. Like it always goes back
yep,
to some, it doesn't matter. I don't care what you did. It
yep,
always goes back to that.
yep,
And we don't connect that. It's always like, but he cheated or he did. It's like it's always that blame game
yep, mhm,
versus what is it what's really triggering you here?
yep,
Why are you really mad? And if we really sat with that, you'll realize that it's like even with yourself. Like a lot of times when I do things, I'm like, damn, you shouldn't have did that. You should have had a little more self-love. You should have loved, like it
yep,
always goes back to
yep.
that. Um, yeah, love. It's crazy.
That's great.
It's
Yeah,
full circle for real.
yeah.
That's another podcast
I was
conversation.
getting ready. Yeah, we we gonna stay in touch because I appreciate you, and we gonna
Let's do
it's a
it.
whole lot more conversations that we gonna have. I appreciate Raven for putting you in contact with me. Yeah, we're gonna stay in touch, and we're gonna stay in communication, because I got some ideas for some podcasts that I want you to be a
Oh
part of.
yeah, definitely keep me posted.
Yeah.
You're on YouTube, baby.